Call to order the special meeting of the Ellsworth City Council, Monday, April 2nd, 2018, 7 p.m. All councilors are present. Item 2 on the agenda, Council Order Number 041800, discussion and action regarding city participation in the relicensing process for the Ellsworth Hydroelectric Project. We'd like to discuss not only the project, but the meeting last Wednesday, what we heard, what people said, so on and so forth. City Manager Cole, anything you'd like to add to this?
Well, you were all there last Wednesday night.
We were.
I think the best count we had was somewhere between 175 and 200 people attended the meeting. Many from Ellsworth, residents or property owners, many from neighboring communities. So the meeting went on for over 2 hours. Certainly people had a chance to express their concerns. I sat down with City Planner Michelle Gagnon after the meeting and Steve Fuller to kind of sort through what we heard at the meeting last Wednesday night. And clearly we heard a lot about water levels, about turbidity, fluctuating water levels, and how it affects recreational opportunities in the waterway, both passive and active, as well as concerns about impacts on property values. What we have done, and it's attached or in your Dropbox packet, is a draft motion to intervene, should you choose to go into that direction. The motion to intervene focuses on the fact that Ellsworth is the site for the hydroelectric project and the Graham Lake Dam, and beyond that, which encompasses the project area, but it also includes 13 miles of shoreline on Graham Lake, 3 miles of the Union River from Graham Lake Dam to Leonard Lake. Leonard Lake itself, which has 4 miles of shoreline, and of course the intertidal portion of the Union River. So certainly we have an interest. Also in the draft motion to intervene, we note the fact that a letter was sent from Ellsworth City Manager David Cole dated October 5th, 2015, sent to Nicholas Palso of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that stated that, quote, "The two dams have provided many benefits to the community, including recreational opportunities on both Graham Lake and on the Union River. As part of the relicensing of the Ellsworth Hydroelectric Project, the city is asking that the impacts of low water levels in Graham Lake, especially during the summer months of July and August, on recreation be considered. Keeping higher water levels through the summer would result in gains in recreational benefits." Again, that was from December 2015. As you all know, we had a panel of experts last Wednesday night from various state and federal resource agencies, plus a representative from Brookfield Renewable. To date, we not only heard during the public meeting last Wednesday night, but subsequent comments from Ellsworth residents and property owners within the Ellsworth portion of the watershed area. Concerns, not exclusively other issues regarding fish passage and all, but what we heard primarily was about the lost economic and recreational opportunities associated with low and fluctuating water levels and related turbidity, particularly on Graham Lake. These conditions also affect their enjoyment of the lake and quality of life there, and if these conditions persist, they may have a negative influence on property values as well. So that would be the grounds for intervention. I don't believe it would restrict us narrowly, but that is the thrust of the argument. Therefore, per the concerns of the residents and property owners of Ellsworth, the city wishes to remain engaged in the FERC relicensing process to retain the ability, as needed, to intervene regarding these impacts to Ellsworth residents and property owners, as well as any lost economic and recreational opportunities along the entire project corridor from Graham Lake to the Union River. So that's it in a nutshell. And I'd entertain any questions, but that is an option for consideration.
Thank you, sir. Councilors, thoughts, discussion?
Do you want a motion before we discuss? You want to discuss before a motion?
You may do as you please.
Well, let's start the ball rolling. I would move, Mr. Chairman, to approve the motion to intervene regarding the relicensure of Ellsworth Hydroelectric Project number P2727-092 as presented this evening, and authorize the city manager to sign on our behalf.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion.
Well, for me, I think David summed it up about as well as anybody could. I think he hit all the nails on all the heads. I think that it's incumbent upon us to be in a situation where we can play a role if need be.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor.
my concern is that there's a lot to this process that hasn't happened yet, and if the 9th is the deadline to intervene, and whether or not we feel like intervening is appropriate at this point, we don't know what the outcome of a lot of different mother moving deadlines that are still coming for decisions to be made on the process. And so I think it would be negligent of us to not have our foot in the door and be able to intervene once some of these other processes like the water testing and those results come back in. If we don't file, then we have no position to intervene.
Thank you. Councilor Hamilton.
So I'm in support of filing for intervener status, but I do think it's important to make a couple of notes, especially from the forum the other night, that it's clear that there are different constituency groups with different goals for the process, and some of those goals conflict. And so I think what is important for the city to do is to identify, which I think Manager Cole has done, in terms of focusing on the issues that impact the citizens of Ellsworth, the property owners. The quality of the water is important, and the recreational opportunities, and that's where our focus should be as we look at this process going forward. It is a regulatory process. There's a process that will be followed, and the intervener status is a step that we would take in court. What I want us to encourage is that we don't just look at it of waiting to see what happens in court, because the court process, just by the nature of it, it results in winners and losers. And there were lots of very good points on all sides, and I think it's important to look at other opportunities along the way to work with parties, to try to negotiate, to try to come through and find some decisions that maybe can be reached and attain the goals that we're talking about, and not just rely on the court process. I think the intervener status is important because if it comes to that, we certainly as a city would want to have that available to us, but we should make other efforts along the way, and we should be focused on those areas identified in terms of property owners, the quality of water, recreation opportunities, and not drift too far afield from the process and what the courts will allow. This is a resource that obviously all of the constituencies that presented the other night want the city to intervene, but they have different goals. And we as a city need to be mindful of resources that we have and focus our efforts on the goals that we think are most appropriate.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Beetham.
This is a process that once you get to the intervener status, if you get that far, this is a process that's going to be very expensive. And it could be to the point where it would have effect on the tax rate of the city of Ellsworth. And because of that, want to be very cautious about using that intervenor status and make sure that we don't get into a situation where we're in the process and it's not doing what we want it to do, or not doing what we feel we should be doing. So because of that, I would like to offer an amendment to the motion that all funding, the future funding for the intervention should come through the City of Ellsworth Council totally. In other words, there'd be no money spent on intervention until we determine that the process has started to fail or it's not going the way we think, and we need to do that. Because I've seen things like this take on a life of its own, and all of a sudden you spend $100,000 on something that you say, what are we doing? And so, but coming back to the council and saying, okay, this is what we need to do, it gives us the chance to say, yes, that fits the shoe of what we want to put forth. So I just very cautious about the money portion of it. So I would offer that amendment.
Councilor Forty, is that acceptable?
That is acceptable to me, yes, sir.
Councilor Moore, you were you
Dawn
made-
did. Dawn
I'm
did.
sorry. Councilor Hudson, you made the second, acceptable to you?
Absolutely.
Friendly amendment?
Further discussion? City Manager?
Yeah.
Cole?
Just a couple points. All the comments are well taken tonight. I agree with the counselor that if we get to the point where we do have to intervene, perhaps we've failed in other efforts to try to work and be a broker and bring people together, because I think we can work outside of the FERC process and probably make more progress that within the process. Also want to point out that City Planner Gagnon and I have had some discussions regarding the Section 401 process that will be run through the DEP. I can tell you through my own experience, that is a comparable process to the FERC process. In fact, some of the issues that were raised last Wednesday night are probably better suited for the 401 process than they are the FERC process. I would also add to Councilor Beetham's comments, I have had experience with the federal regulatory process during my 30-year career, and specifically with FERC, and written some pretty big checks. And it's not to be done lightly, but having a motion to intervene keeps our options open. We can continue to work on all fronts to try to resolve the issues and hopefully come to reasonable accommodations. I would ask Planner Gagnon, if you're so inclined, Chair, if you'd like to make any comments about the 401 process.
So I spoke to Kathy Howard from the Maine DEP, and what she has informed me is that Brookfield has found, FERC has found Brookfield's application complete. So now Brookfield needs to submit a water quality certification license application to the DEP, to Kathy Howard, by April 9th. And mind you, there is some, it's April 9th or April 10th, but we'll use April 9th just to be sure, but I believe it's April 10th if it's 60 days, but let's say April 9th. And then what Mrs. Howard is going to do, so she's going to have 12 months to review the application, because an application has not yet submitted, so she can't review something she doesn't have yet. So she will have 12 months to review the application, Brookfield's application, that is. And she's going to, within that 12 months, she will be taking comments. And she has, by the end of the 12 months, to have to submit her conditions underneath that license to FERC that is obligated to include any condition or anything she puts in there into their license. And I think what's important here, really, really important, in the process, from what we heard last week, is that what she does pertains to, and I'm just going to summarize it, it pertains to water quality, it pertains to fish passage, and it pertains to things of that nature, turbidity and things like this. And so if people want to comment, commenting, I'm not saying commenting to FERC wasn't a good thing, but no one had an application. So I think it would be very effective if people wanted to comment to Kathy Howard on the issues that we heard last week, and that they may want to forward those comments to FERC as well. But it's very important that these comments see their way to Kathy Howard. And what's also really important is if you want to be effective in your comments, you have to link your comments to the water quality classification standards. Because if you make a comment that's not based within the law, the comment is not necessarily going to have the same weight. It will not have the same weight than if it's based within the law. So it's really important to link this back to the water classification. I have those, and Kathy had made clear last week that there was a sheet there to sign up, and also you may request to be part of all proceedings, so you would be inform if there's any public proceeding pertaining to what she does with the water quality certification and license. You may be advised through that process. So you have to sign up with her, and you should be providing the comments as well. And I'm sure that Manager Cole and I will work together and see how we make sure we find more information if we need to. But that's what we found out. So I think that people were very concerned, and there was maybe comments that this is what, like, the end of it was April 9th. It's not the end of it. The April 9th starts that whole process for Kathy Howard and the water quality certification license. So I think it's important to know that.
Yeah. And if I could add to that, I know of at least one other situation in another state on a gas pipeline. I have to double check to make absolutely sure about this, but I believe that project was held up by the Section 401 water quality review rather than actually by the Federal Regulatory Commission. It's important to know that 401 is delegated authority from the federal government.
Correct.
Under the Clean Water Act.
Correct.
These are not states. The states may apply that differently in some cases or interpret it differently, but it is the Federal Clean Water Act that's being enforced. So in my mind, it has equal weight. It may not be applied the same way because there may be different rules involved, but it is another opportunity for people to weigh in. And I don't believe you have formal motions to intervene in the DEP process. I think you just sign up to be part of it. And
Correct. And if I don't want to make things too complex or complicated, and it is probably the second most complicated process after a nuclear plant, if I may. I mean, that's what I read in an article. But the motion to intervene would be important if, say, DEP says the condition, and then Brookfield appeals those conditions, or something doesn't happen. That's where, maybe that could be useful. But I think there's a lot of work to be done at a much more lower level that could be a lot more meaningful than waiting, as someone said, to hit that level of judiciary process.
And aside from all that kind of talk, it's to just open up channels of communication with Brookfield
Correct.
and our property owners and try to figure out if there are things that can be done.
Thank you. Councilor Crosswood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Notwithstanding all the aspects of the issue which have already been raised by various interest groups, in my mind, this is about Ellsworth residents, it's about taxpayers, it's about people who live on Graham Lake and Leonard Lake. I agree with the precautions that Councilor Beetham has brought forward regarding financial aspects, legal action, attorney fees. These things don't just add up after a while, they multiply, and they become huge millstones. So we need to be aware of that. We need also to be careful. I think we have a physical situation here with the relicensing of the project think we also have a fiscal responsibility in regards to what this could cost the city, one way or the other. So, having said that and hearing the report of Planner Gagnon, I would certainly agree with the motion as amended, and I think we move forward from here, and we move forward cautiously and with our eyes open. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Counselor. One thing that, in my mind, that hasn't been mentioned, one particular thing, everyone has mentioned the recreation, the turbidity, the property owners, so on and so forth. And I just want to remind everyone that Brookfield is also one of those property owners. It isn't just residential that we have to consider. It's everybody that owns land there. Having said that, any further discussion? Motion and a friendly amendment and a second are all on the table. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? We're adjourned.